Terry Bollea, known worldwide as Hulk Hogan, died Thursday in his Clearwater, Florida home of cardiac arrest at age 71. Hogan was the most widely recognized and well-known professional wrestler in history. A pop culture icon who rose to fame in the 1980s alongside the advent of Hulkamania, Hogan took the lead role in the explosive national expansion of World Wrestling Federation, which thrust the entire industry into the mainstream for the first time in history. Hogan idolized Dusty Rhodes and superstar Billy Graham. He played baseball, attempted to become a musician as a guitar player, but ultimately got into wrestling at the behest of the Briscoe brothers, as so many in Florida did. Hogan was booked by Eddie Graham and Jerry Jarrett while working the independents, and he was ultimately introduced to Vincent J. McMahon by Terry Funk, which led to him signing with the World Wrestling Federation in 1979, just 2 years into his career. But it was not until 5 years later, after stints with the AWA and New Japan Pro Wrestling, that Vincent Kennedy McMahon brought Hogan back to WWF with Hulkamania introduced in 1984. Hogan ultimately wrestled for 35 years from 1977 to 2012, rising to fame in WWF, but also leading World Championship Wrestling to its greatest prominence and later serving a brief role with TNA Wrestling. Hogan actually started with WWF as a heel during that first stint before ultimately becoming the consummate babyface. He won the WWE Championship 6 times while leading the revolution of an industry long seen as a sideshow, taking it mainstream for the first time in its history. His combined WWE Championship reign of 2,184 days, it is the second longest in history, only behind Bruno Sammartino at 4,040 days. Hogan headlined and main evented 8 of the first 9 WrestleManias. His partnership and feud with Macho Man Randy Savage, the Mega Powers from 1988 to 89, was legendary, and he was the first man to win consecutive Royal Rumble matches in 1990 and 91. The body slam heard round the world, Hogan taking down Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3 in 1987, remains one of the industry's most iconic moments. Their match the following year is the most watched in American history, with more than 33 million viewers tuning in live on television. Hogan's move to WCW was not a shock, but his heel turn becoming Hollywood Hulk Hogan and the formation of the New World Order, it changed the industry yet again. He went on to win 6 more heavyweight championships in WCW, with the NWO serving as the catalyst that pushed Monday Night Nitro past Monday Night Raw in the ratings for 83 straight weeks. His extremely high salary, along with the immense creative control allowed to him by Eric Bischoff, were concurrently part of WCW's downfall. When the company ultimately folded, he returned to WWE, won his final heavyweight title with them in 2002. He also had his last notable WrestleMania match that year, Icon versus Icon, Hogan versus The Rock at WrestleMania X8. It's a match many consider to be among the most iconic, fittingly, in professional wrestling history. He went on to wrestle McMahon at WrestleMania the following year before returning to TV as Mr. America, and he wrestled his final matches with WWE in 2005 and 2006, defeating Shawn Michaels and Randy Orton, both at SummerSlam, the former in the main event in 2005, though he did make numerous other appearances in the 2 decades that followed within WWE. Hogan was twice inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, first individually by Sylvester Stallone in 2005, and then again in 2020 as part of the NWO. While WWE never rescinded his individual accolade, it did temporarily remove his name from the Hall of Fame for a brief period of time. As significant a figure as Hogan was inside wrestling, he became the industry's first cultural phenomenon outside of it, with perhaps Stone Cold Steve Austin serving a distant second in that regard. Hogan was everywhere in the 1980s and 1990s. He was on Saturday morning cartoons on CBS and late night talk shows on NBC. You could find him on NBC the same way you could MTV. He had action figures and lunchboxes, weights and cups. The red and yellow Hulkamania logo was all over shirts and bandanas and anything else WWF could market. Marvel had to sue WWF over the use of the name Hulk, and they were being paid compensation for that, I believe still to this day. Hogan appeared as Thunderlips in Rocky III, which was actually before Hulkamania took off, while he was on break from WWF working with AWA. He also starred in No Holds Barred, Mr. Nanny, and a few other films. After he retired, Hogan Knows Best became a hit reality show featuring Hogan and his family, and he also made guest appearances on The A-Team, Baywatch, and many other shows. Hogan was long criticized for how he treated younger wrestlers, specifically with how he actively held down up-and-comers who he felt threatened his spot at the top, whether it was WWF or WCW. While many of his contemporaries hold Hogan in high regard, generations of wrestlers that followed certainly do not see him in the same light. Compounding negative thoughts about Bollea off-screen were rumors of racism and misogyny. The former became apparent the last decade when footage of him using racial slurs was made public, souring fans on Hogan. He ultimately sued Gawker over the publication of those tapes and won a significant settlement in 2016 for $140 million. While the case created plenty of negative publicity around Hogan, it also set new precedents for tabloid journalism that exists to this day. Hogan was fired by WWE when those tapes were released, though he was ultimately brought back to the company. In recent years, Hogan further divided fans by not only publicly sharing his political views, but directly supporting a candidate and movement that embraced him, despite all of the legitimate concerns about his eroding public figure. Hogan recently entered into a new deal with WWE, where he would begin serving as a brand ambassador while WWE received an investment stake in Real American Beer, a company he co-founded that would simultaneously become a sponsor of the product. He was also serving as commissioner of Real American Freestyle, a startup amateur wrestling promotion set to hold its first event later this year, which, frankly, appears to be dead on arrival. Despite that fresh WWE agreement, Hogan only made one of multiple scheduled appearances for the company. That came in January when Monday Night Raw debuted on Netflix in Los Angeles, and Hogan was vociferously booed out of the Intuit Dome by fans. He was planned to make multiple appearances, including on editions of Saturday Night's Main Event, but got pulled from all of them. Current WWE superstars, they've been outspoken about not only that moment in LA, but Hogan being involved with the company in any capacity. Personally, my view of Hogan is not that complicated. My growth as a wrestling fan came after Hogan had passed his peak of popularity, and I never cared for him in any capacity, not compared to other wrestlers who shared the screen with him or eventually took his top spots in WWF. As an adult, I never held any respect for him, not as a person, nor as an entertainer, and certainly not as a man. What remains incontrovertible, however, is that other than perhaps including McMahon himself, no one had a greater impact on modern professional wrestling than Hulk Hogan. He took WWF from a relative sideshow and forced it into the mainstream. He became a pop culture icon, the likes of which never existed before and are unlikely to exist again when it comes to wrestlers. WWE and the industry as a whole may not exist in the mainstream here in 2025 if it was not for the Hogan and Hulkamania phenomenon 40 years ago. So while I personally do not shed a tear for his loss, many others understandably do. I feel for his family and friends who lost a loved one. Hogan will ultimately be remembered for his highs, much more so than his lows. And there is no doubt that Hulkamania will live forever. That's Hulk Hogan, dead Thursday, July 24th, 2025, at age 71. Vintage, Hulk Hogan is not only an all-time figure, he has become in recent years a controversial figure. How, on the date of his death here, will you remember him?
You know, people don't like when you say someone has a complicated legacy, but I sometimes I think that word works. To your point, what you said at the end there, I don't think he'll necessarily be remembered for the highs more than the lows. It just depends who you are and what, like, the current generation of fans, I think for the most part, maybe only know him for the lows and all that stuff that came with it, and are rightfully think he's a piece of garbage for a lot of the things he said and he did. I usually tend to separate the artist from the art, I guess, and I go back and watch some of those WWF things he did, and I enjoyed them. I also think he was a terrible human being, and I'm not buying Real American Beer or supporting any of the things that he's supporting. So I kind of split it like that. But you are right that he is probably one of the two greatest pro wrestlers of all time in terms of just general accomplishment and impact. You know, it's him and Ric Flair. And it's kind of like how, like, Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time, but I don't think anybody would say he's the best quarterback of all time,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. And I think that's kind of how I feel about Hogan. He's not the best, obviously not the best wrestler by a country mile, but he is arguably the greatest. And you could even say that, like, him or Vince, who was a bigger factor in the rise, you could make the case another businessman was going to come along and eventually try to turn pro wrestling into a national thing. I don't think any of that works without Hogan. The charisma and everything that absolutely fit that period of time in the early 80s. He kind of defined that period of time. Looking back now, it's cartoonish and laughable, but that worked at the time. So, like, there's two different ways to look at it. It was a real mess of things the last 10 plus years of his life. It's too bad that his family appeared to be completely broken at the time of his death. I think his daughter Brooke had said they hadn't spoken since 2023.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just, on a personal level, that's sad for everybody involved. But it's kind of sums up the Hulk Hogan experience. Somebody who kind of reached the highest of highs and completely burnt out, and then reached the lowest of lows.
I disagree with the first thing that you said, that people will remember him differently. I think 10 years from now, when you think back about Hulk Hogan, you're thinking Hulkamania, red and yellow, rock and wrestling.
You have not been on Blue Sky today. I'll
no,
tell you that.
no, but I'm not talking about 2025. I'm talking about 2035. Okay, I'm saying
right
when you're looking back, Hulk Hogan in your head, the picture that you have, it's ripping the shirt, it's Hulkamania, it's say your prayers, eat your vitamins. That's going to be the everlasting legacy of Hogan. I don't think people are going to
within WWE.
No, within the American zeitgeist. I don't think people are going to be looking back 10 years from now and thinking about, oh, well, there was this one time where he was on a tape cheating on his wife, saying the N-word a bunch. Like, certainly we hold that in a realm of despicableness, and we have our issues with him, and as many people do. But just like with any other, or many other, I should say, not any other, many other problematic celebrities, you largely remember them for what they did in that realm than what they did personally. This is not an O.J. Simpson situation where this man allegedly killed 2 people, right? And certainly did other stuff.
Correct.
You can find Hogan despicable, but he's not accused of the things that certainly OJ was, or even, because we're talking in a wrestling context, McMahon has been accused of. It's different. Saying things and doing things, are quite different. When you speak about McMahon, Hogan, you mentioned Ric Flair as well, the most important figures in professional wrestling history. As I was putting this together, I started trying to think about, what would my objective Mount Rushmore be? The men who made professional wrestling what it is today, and, allowed it to become something that is still part of culture in 2025. And the 4 names I came up with were Bruno Sammartino, because it probably would not have lasted as long as it did without his involvement. Vince McMahon, Hulk Hogan, for the reasons that we've already explained, and then Antonio Inoki as well, because he had a very similar impact in Japan, and it is just as popular in many different ways in Japan as it is in the United States, and certainly cases can be made for Lucha Libre as well. But I'm speaking at large. Those are the 4 names that stick out to me, and Hogan is the one of those names that transcended wrestling. When you think of Sammartino, it's that old school bruiser wrestler who used to sell out Madison Square Garden every night. When you think of Vince McMahon, it's the wrestling promoter. When you think of Inoki, it's the star and the promoter, who I believe became a politician eventually in Japan. Hulk Hogan was a cultural icon in the United States. He transcended all of it in a way that Ric Flair has not. Stone Cold Steve Austin did not. The Rock certainly has. The Rock is almost the flip. He's almost the inverse of Hogan, in that he's also known as this cultural phenomenon, But more so than being the wrestler who is also the celebrity, he's the celebrity who used to wrestle. That's the only person in my mind that comes close to Hogan when it comes to impacting American culture. And I think he comes nowhere close to Hogan in that regard, because Hogan was the wrestler who became a star, and Rock is a star who happened to be a wrestler.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of Mount Rushmore, I mean, some of the founding fathers, or at least, on that monument, owned slaves, and it's not something
exactly
that isn't discussed.
Similarly, when you think of Thomas Jefferson, right? Like, him being a slave owner is not the first thing you think of.
Well, I think the larger thing
that's
is
kind of what I was saying with Hogan, though.
We don't really have a monoculture anymore. We don't have general everybody thinks one way about somebody. If you're someone who's not a wrestling fan and you're under 30, you probably remember him for the Gawker thing.
Probably.
Or, if you're like, so yes. Like, that's just, that's what I was trying to say. It's like, I think people there's a generation, not even an entire generation, a subsect within that generation, which will remember him for that, for a good reason, because Gawker changed journalism, and the destruction of it changed it again.
Well, let me briefly interject. So I wrote a 1,000-word story on Hogan's death today before we taped this show. And when you write a story like that about someone who has just passed, you have to decide journalistically, where is the right part of the story to include, for lack of a better term, misdeeds. Is it something that belongs in the lead, in the secondary portion, or in the tertiary portion, the later, stages of the story? And as I was constructing it and putting it together and editing it myself and figuring out how it read, I could not bring myself to put that in the upper portion, the lead is what we call it, of the story, because of the impact he had made in so many other areas. And because misdeeds, I'm just using a word, I don't know if it's the most appropriate word here, we're speaking extemporaneously, were not of the variety of OJ or McMahon or some of these other, people. So that is what I meant. As someone who had just written a 1,000-word story about him, where did I put that information? I put it in the latter stages of the story, because it happened in the latter stages of his career. It's not like it was something that was an issue that permeated his life throughout every single decade. It's something that happened after he had been retired and when he had been a reality figure more so than a professional wrestler.
That's the thing. I remember Hogan Knows Best.
Absolutely. I watched that.
I don't remember how many seasons it was, but I remember watching it. Obviously his son Nick got in that really bad car accident that really damaged one of his friends. I think Hogan said some bad stuff about that too at the time. Yeah, man, did you watch that show back in the day?
Despite not being a Hogan fan at all, I did watch. I watched every episode of that show.
It was
like 05 to 07, like 4 seasons.
Yeah.
It was a quality show from the standpoint of, I can't believe like this is Hogan and his family and they're doing this stuff. It was also, I don't want to say at the height of reality TV, but it was at the point of reality TV where some of those shows started becoming popular. So people were finding any celebrity they could who would let cameras into their home and might be interesting. And their family, to be fair, certainly was interesting, but it was him being thrust almost back into the public sphere that led to that videotape of him cheating on his wife with Bubba the Love Sponge's wife. I believe her name is Heather Clem. It made that newsworthy. And then when that went to trial with Gawker, transcripts of the entire tape, because I believe only a couple minute clip was actually released at the time, transcripts of that tape revealed he said the N-word on multiple different occasions, which then I want to say led to the media of that getting released and people being able to see it and hear it. But that was a extremely complicated time when all that transpired.
Yeah.
And what it says to me, what I find so interesting about that, okay, is there are other celebrities who have been caught in similar situations. Michael Richards, Kramer on Seinfeld is a great example of that. He has largely been forgiven. Others have too. The reaction Hogan gets from wrestling fans, or received, I should say, in the past tense now, from wrestling fans over the last 15 years specifically, but even as recently as this January, the way he was booed out of the Intuit Dome, that, I don't want to say it shocked me, but I was surprised it was that loud, that singular indirection. And I believe it was not just the tape and the feelings about Hogan turning negative even more so 10 years ago, but also what he had done in the prior, year and a half, supporting who he supported politically and so on.
Well, that's the thing. Hogan never left the spotlight, even after he said the bad things.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Richards, I can tell you the last time I ever saw him anywhere. I think he did a Comedians in Cars with Coffee one time.
He did, I think he may have gotten a spot on Curb Your Enthusiasm, maybe, but that
maybe,
was it.
but like it wasn't like
he's not going and doing a one-man show somewhere.
Yeah. So like Hogan never left, and then he doesn't go away, and he's just kind of always popping up, and then depending on your political leanings, he speaks at the Republican convention, and that upsets a whole nother group of people again. We talked about this at the time, but I wasn't surprised the crowd in LA booed him. I couldn't believe WWE thought that was going to work and that people were going to like it, especially there in LA. This entire partnership with the Real American Beer, I just never understood it. Like from a business perspective, from a cultural perspective, just very strange decisions. And the company never went back. We get commercials for him, but the company never brought him back in person for understandable reasons. So it was a remarkable self-own there.
Yeah, Chris, we said it at the time. I remember when the announcement came down, the partnership with the beer company and how WWE had an ownership stake and how he would, be an ambassador. And you and I looked at each other and we're like, this is an incredible cell phone. This is going to be a total unforced error for WWE. And we previewed it as such. We said they better not let him go out there on that Raw debut in Los Angeles because he's going to get booed out of the building. And it was one of those times where I can say, I was spot on because that's exactly what happened. The reaction to that, even this past week, I saw a clip from the Undertaker's podcast where I guess his host or whoever he talks to on that show said to him, "Hey, Taker, what was that like?" And he just laughed to himself at it because it was so bad. And Hogan kind of kayfabed it when he went backstage saying, "Oh no, that was great. They all made plenty of noise for me. That was great." It was not, Hogan. It was not. People at the end, they hated this man, most of them. And that speaks to your point on, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he won't be remembered the way I believe he will be, but I just think Hulkamania and all of that was so crucially important in the mainstream improvement and platforming of WWF at the time, that when you look back at Hogan, those are the thoughts you're going to have in your head of ripping the shirt, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, maybe Thunder Lips slips in there. I know I still have to this day. I'm looking at it right now. It's in my office. And again, I'm not a fan of the guy. I have the Hulk Hogan plush Wrestle Buddy. I have right here. I have a WrestleMania 24 chair, and then sitting on the chair, I have a Hulk Hogan plush wrestling buddy. And again, I'm not even a fan of the guy. One of my coworkers, he said to me, "I've never watched wrestling in my entire life. I had Hulk Hogan action figures. I had a Hulk Hogan lunchbox, and I had the Hulk Hogan wrestling buddy that I have."
Yeah. He
never watched wrestling.
He was pro wrestling.
Yeah.
To pretty much.
Still is.
So many people.
Still is. You go around the world, drop into any country, Spain, name one, professional wrestler, Hulk Hogan. That's the answer you're going to get.
Wanted to talk briefly. You mentioned it in the buildup. I think Hogan Rock at WrestleMania 18 is the greatest wrestling match of all time. Not that it's obviously the best worked match, but like Cody Rhodes has said the same thing. I posted the clip earlier today too, but like everything about that crowd reaction in that match and the double turn and everything, like that ultimately is what pro wrestling is about and what you're trying to get to, which is to have a crowd react in such a way.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a remarkable moment. I was just getting out of pro wrestling at the time, and I didn't pay attention to any of his returning to the red and yellow days and all the stuff that happened afterward. But I don't know. Like I watched like the Andre Slam and the success of WrestleMania 3 was a bigger deal, undoubtedly. But in terms of Hogan moments in the ring, what stands out to you the most as someone who was never kind of a Hogan guy?
Probably Icon versus Icon at WrestleMania
Yeah,
X8.
the other would be the NWO turn.
Well, okay, if you're talking about not a match, but a moment,
Yeah, just in wrestling.
singular moment. Well, you know what? For me, the singular moment for Hogan, and it's nothing that it's all, historic for me because it's not things I watched live. I wasn't a fan, but it's the body slam of Andre the Giant, number one. Like if I had to rank Hulk Hogan's greatest moments, like if we were doing like one of those lists that BuzzFeed would do, on something like this, it would be the body slam of Andre the Giant, one. Probably the heel turn of Hollywood Hulk Hogan, two. Mega Powers Explode, three. And then Icon versus Icon, four. Something like that.
Probably, yeah. I think NWO and the Slam are 1 and 2 for sure.
I mean,
it is crazy.
NWO is not above the Slam. It's just not. That was all time.
But like if you didn't grow up for the Slam, like if you weren't just kind of, again, it kind of comes down to generations. Like it's him having that whole second run with the NWO is kind of crazy. Like when you think about it, like to have a whole second life like that and to do something, it set the tone for what people wanted to happen for the entire history of pro wrestling since. Mm-hmm. Everybody said John Cena hasn't had his Hollywood Hogan moment. We finally do, and it's not going well, but relatively speaking, but like just there's so many things that like some of the biggest moments in pro wrestling history, he is just a part of, and that is inescapable.
The craziest part about his run with NWO, you look at that and you're like, man, this guy's been wrestling forever. Why did WCW sign this guy? He's all gray, his bleach blonde hair. I can't believe he's still doing this at this age. He was 43 years old when the NWO started. Okay.
Yeah.
There's people out there wrestling in WWE right now who are 45, 46, 48. No one's saying that they should be retiring. Back then, years even before NWO started, they were saying Hogan should retire.
Hollywood Hogan really was, like, you go back and watch those old WCWs, so many times he didn't show up or wasn't there, but that NWO thing just went on for so long and stayed hot for such a long time, and to have that long run, briefly dropping the title to Luger before getting it back and then dropping it to Sting in a kind of disastrous thing that kind of spelled the beginning of the downfall at Starrcade for WCW. There was a tweet from somebody on Twitter that I keep coming back to, and it says, someone can be a horrible person and make things that you like, that were important to you, that enriched your life. You don't have to defend them to like the thing that they made. You can still like it. And I think that's ultimately where I am, where I still like watching the Hulk Hogan old wrestling stuff and also think he was a terrible person. And I could hold two separate thoughts in my head, I guess. And that's kind of ultimately where I come down on this. I'm sad for Hogan's family and kind of the situation they were in, but I don't know. It's kind of where I land.
I think it's a legitimate point of view. For me, each case is individual. I don't have a special place for Hogan, and I don't have a need to ever watch any of his matches again or moments or anything like that. I'll see them naturally in highlight packages and, greatest wrestling moments. I'm sure we'll see them, Friday night on SmackDown and Monday night on Raw and whenever else WWE decides to air them. But I generally am not a person who separates the two. At least it depends.
That's fair.
In the circumstance. Like, I still have on my phone right now, and I still have MP3s because Silver King is washed, every Kanye West album. When I do a shuffle, I skip a song if he's the one on it. I can't listen to him.
You should just take it off your phone at this point.
I probably should.
Doing that.
No, I probably should. But I keep thinking to myself, I used to listen to this guy religiously when I was in college. I mean, College Dropout was like the album while I was in school, and his subsequent albums and songs, he has some incredible feature spots and tracks with Jay-Z and other people. Forever, he's in that with Eminem, Lil Wayne, etc. Drake, and I don't want to not be able to listen to those songs, but then I hear his voice and I'm like, oh yeah, that's the guy who said this, this, and this about people like me, and Yeah. I don't want any involvement with him. So, I think what Hogan, said on film is not something you can take back. And
Nope.
the way he acted, professionally and personally, depending who you speak with, over large portions of his career, deserves scorn, and it deserves to be noted in a conversation like this surrounding his death at age 71. At the same time, to the point that you're making, and to contextualize it in the larger scheme of who this individual was, Hulkamania was the moment in the history of professional wrestling. He was the guy, and you cannot extricate him from the history of the World Wrestling Federation, even today, what WWE has become, because there is no way in 2025 professional wrestling is as mainstream as it is, and it's as successful as it has been, without the existence of Hulk Hogan. Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. Data with episode 770 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is Thursday, so you know exactly what that means. We are here to break down everything that happened across NXT and AEW over the last week. But not only that, the Silver King, in a rare move, is bringing you a not so instant analysis of TNA Slammiversary 2025, the first full TNA pay-per-view I have watched in a long ass time. Lots of connections to WWE and NXT, and multiple great moments on the show as well. So plenty for us to discuss here. We will also be dipping our toe in for what I cannot imagine will be longer than 60 seconds. Talking about WWE Evolve. I was able to catch up with every episode except for the last one, so about a month of shows. And I think I have like 4 bullet points in total to mention about that. So we'll be talking NXT, Evolve, TNA Wrestling, and AEW all on this episode. As always, there will be timestamps in the episode description, so make sure you go and follow those if you wish to jump around. But I hope you listen to the entire show. As we get started here with episode 770, the Silver King does need to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Also follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky. Episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all that good stuff. You can also send in questions and comments for the show, and we will see them, try to include them on the program. Again, Twitter at Getting Overcast, Blue Sky at Getting Over. Please, lastly, also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, exclusive news analysis posts every week as well. You can get it at buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Again, we are a free show, an ad-free show. We would love some financial support just so we can keep this whole shindig running. All right. So please hit us up. $5 a month. Not much. It's a Starbucks. It's less. $50 for the entire year. Hit us up. We'd appreciate it. All right, look, I mentioned we have a ton on this show, and we do. So this is going to be the order of operations. Because so much from TNA Slammiversary fed into NXT, we're going to start with TNA. Then we'll hit WWE's NXT, briefly talk about Evolve. Again, I think it's going to be 60 seconds. And then break down the full week in AEW. As mentioned, there are timestamps. You can find them. You can skip around. Just listen to the whole damn show. You're already like 35 minutes in. Just keep going. So the TNA Slammiversary 2025 analysis is where we're going to start. This was announced as nearly 8,000 fans in attendance, the most attended North American show in TNA's 23-year history. There's no question the AJ Styles announcement put it over the top, just given how many tickets moved late. It was also the number one United States trend all night on Twitter. I checked. Anyone suggesting that this WWE relationship is not seriously benefiting TNA, they're being straight up silly as far as I'm concerned. And we'll circle back to that topic momentarily. Let's first discuss the two key matches on this card. Title versus title. Masha Slamovich, Knockouts champion against Jacy Jayne, the NXT champion. This was not the co-main event that I expected, just given the stakes. Fatal Influence regularly interfered, and Jayne even used Slamovich's title for a false finish. Slamovich works with two women whose names were on her bottom third graphic, but they did not come down until late in the match, despite having the numbers disadvantage, which was really nonsensical. The barricade went into business for itself as they were all trying to run into the crowd. Really rough moment. The referee took a super kick before Jayne ate a snowplow with a late count, resulting in a false finish. Jayne ultimately bounced Masha into the middle turnbuckle and then hit Rolling Encore to win, relatively clean in the finish, becoming a double champion across WWE and TNA. Shocking result as far as I was concerned. Perhaps not when you think about whether a more likely outcome was a WWE wrestler holding a TNA title or vice versa. But I figured with Trick Williams holding the TNA title, WWE would split the difference. They'd give Masha the NXT title if this, didn't result in a no contest. And then I thought, okay, wait, Trick is definitely dropping the title tonight. So then strapping Jacy up ensures that there's at least one main event level crossover between WWE and TNA. Again, that was my thought at the time this match ended. So we'll come back to this. The match exceeded expectations for me. Jacy continues to impress since getting strapped up. The story they're telling of her being the most beatable champion, yet not actually being a transitional champion, it's pretty solid. She's long deserved an opportunity. She keeps getting better. The only shame is that Fallon Henley's not getting the same opportunity when she's equally, if not more deserving. I went 3.5 stars B, but I'd have been higher if not for all the interference and such. I also want to make sure I put over Masha because she's awesome. Huge future ahead of her, whether that's in WWE or AEW. She's only 27 years old, so she'll have something big happening. Coming out of this, the question is when Jacy drops the title and to whom? Here's what I'm wondering. So Gigi Dolan, right? Priscilla Kelly is her name. She's going to be available soon. Signing with TNA, it seems like a no-brainer move for her. Her, I think, fiance is working there. It may be tough to hotshot her right to the Knockouts title, but it would make a lot of sense to rekindle their feud and have it lead to establishing a new main event woman in the division. Then again, will WWE actually let Jacy lose clean to someone whose contract they just did not renew, who's now in another promotion? I'm not sure about that. TNA Championship, Trick Williams defending against Joe Hendry and Mike Santana. This, of course, was the main event. Frankie Kazarian joined commentary for this after cutting a really rough promo. Santana got a high-energy rap entrance. It felt really important. Trick got a gospel-style entrance. The Faces hit the Street Profits finisher. Williams flipped out of Hendry's standing ovation finisher only to eat it, with Kaz pulling the referee out of the ring, screwing Hendry. So he got ejected. Trick sold a knee after taking a huge tope from Hendry. That led referees and trainers down. Hendry hit standing ovation on Santana for a false finish. Williams was still just watching from the ramp in the trainer's arms. Santana came back with 2 spin the blocks, seemingly for the 1-2-3, but Trick ran inside the ring, tossed him out, stole the pinfall, and retained the title in a shocking but ultimately pretty telegraphed finish. And I did not love this at all. The biggest issue was the match. For a long, pretty exciting show, this was a crazy short main event at 13 minutes. It was basically only finishers and then Trick's injury cell. Because it was so short, Williams never going backstage completely killed the drama here. If this had 18 minutes and he could have left for 5 and just disappeared, fans may have believed the injury was real, and commentary definitely could have sold it. Hey, we're guaranteed to have a new champion, building the drama. Instead, while the match continued, they don't really even have a ringside area. Everyone's just looking at Trick, not the guys in the ring. And the stolen win was crazy telegraphed because of that. Now, don't get it twisted. Williams is doing a great job as a heel champion, but no one was actually put in position to succeed here. It was by far the most disappointing match of the entire night, bell to bell. I'm at 2.25 stars and a C. And that's, again, me just talking about the booking and the match. As far as the decision to keep the strap on Trick, look, I understand what WWE and TNA are doing. It was the wrong decision on this particular show in this particular situation. Leading into the main event, TNA had a huge women's title change, a match of the night for the X Division, the return of AJ Styles, and a hugely inventive car crash ladder match. The entire show was building to an apex. Santana winning the title and becoming a made man in front of a homestanding crowd that was ready to go apeshit for him. And then TNA just didn't pull the trigger. They didn't land the plane. It was the perfect opportunity. And a better one, it's simply not going to exist. When are they going to do it? In Lowell, Massachusetts at Bound for Glory in, let me check my calendar, 3 months without a record crowd at that time? On some random NXT PLE? A Worlds Collide show? That's the part of this I fail to understand. I get the concept of leave them wanting more, I do. But you don't do it like this. TNA made the same mistake with Hendry. They strapped him up months after his peak when they actually should have done it. I remember the crowd reaction to Hendry winning. It was like, oh, cool, thanks, finally. As opposed to, oh my God, wow, this is amazing, our guy finally won. That said, what TNA fans angry about this fail to understand is that this is not a situation like with AEW, where Kenny Omega won the title, dropped it to Christian Cage, I think on an AEW show, and then Christian just relinquished it. This is an actual partnership. It's 50-50 booking. Santana, Hendry, Slamovich, they've already beaten NXT talent clean. And these titles will eventually be won back by TNA wrestlers. What seems to be going over everyone's heads here is that this entire angle is being framed with WWE as the bad guy. Both champions are heels. They stole the title win and retention respectively. TNA is the face side. And the goal is to put over their talent in the end along with their promotion. So I don't understand the animus over all of this, but it is fair to have wanted Santana to win on this night. No doubt about that. One other consideration, and then we'll kind of move on. TNA is apparently set to announce a TV deal pretty soon. And October 1st is generally when those deals kick in. It's quite possible that putting the titles on WWE superstars is a move to juice those early ratings, get people to buy into those shows, and then they're going to flip them back to TNA talent. Don't be surprised if that's what happens. I don't know that for sure, but it would make a lot of sense. The X Division Championship was on the line, Moose defending against Leon Slater. Classic David versus Goliath match. Veteran seeking a record-length reign against an upstart seeking to become the youngest champion in history. Slater hit a really impressive move called Utopia, a rack-style Blue Thunder Bomb. And then this kid also does a Swanton 450, which was ridiculous. Got a false finish on that. I wasn't even planning to break this down, but the match was cool as shit. Unfortunately, a ringside code red looked rough as hell. Slater came back with a mid-ring Swanton Bomb and then a Swanton 450, and he won the title. Moose put the kid over afterward by literally strapping him up, which was really cool. 4 stars, A-, match of the night, moment of the night. For me, never having seen Slater wrestle before and not caring much about Moose at all, other than the fact that he shares a name with my dog, they did a fantastic job drawing emotion, getting crowd reaction going. It felt like a big-time moment for a young guy, and it was even more impactful because this led directly to AJ Styles' appearance after the match. Massive, massive pop for Styles. The whole arena sang his classic TNA theme. Styles put over Slater huge. And while I knew he wasn't turning on the kid, he was wearing all black. So I wasn't 100% sure. That was the entire appearance, though. It was all it needed to be since the guy hadn't been there in over a decade. But I did think there was a chance that he might do something like promise to defend the WWE Intercontinental Championship in TNA if he wins it at SummerSlam, a way to cross-promote. Ultimately, this was the best possible use of Styles to put over a young talent. I'm glad he got the chance to do it. And coming out of this match, I couldn't help but think to myself, man, I can't wait for Javon Evans to get a moment like this. And it seems like WWE is saving that for the NXT Championship, but really he should have already won the North American title because that's pretty much the equivalent of the X Division strap in TNA. The Tag Team Championship match, Nemeth Brothers against the Hardys, Rascals in First Class in a ladder match. This was ridiculous in the best way. Real metal ladders, not the fiberglass shit that WWE uses. Some dude, Myron Reed, threw himself out of the ring for a tope cutter off the apron to the floor. gnarly. Some other crazy spots. Elbow drop through a propped up ladder ringside. Johnny Damon, the baseball player, shoving Ryan Nemeth. AJ Francis did a moonsault off a ladder. Pretty impressive for a big man. And then First Class got shoved off a ladder into two propped up ladders ringside. AJ goes through this ladder feet first through the rungs like a coup de grace, but he takes the rung straight up to his crotch. We posted a clip on social media. If you missed it, you got to see this. I was floored by it. Jeff Hardy, he then does a swanton bomb into both rascals who are next to each other on propped up ladders, but they don't break. So you see Jeff go, well, we kind of want them to break. He goes, F it. He does it again. They still don't break. It was crazy. And then with all the other ladders broken, Jeff hit a remote control with a rope ladder unfolding from the ceiling. The Hardys did stereo twists of fate into the Nemeths with chairs around their necks. And then Jeff climbed the rope ladder and grabbed the titles, with the Hardys winning the TNA Tag Team Championships. The inventiveness in this finish was fantastic. The bumps were insane. The match was kind of ridiculous, as I said earlier. I don't even know how to grade this. The wrestling wasn't great. The spots were. I don't know. I had a blast, man. The Hardys were better here than basically their entire AEW run combined, maybe with the exception of the Jeff and Darby Allin match. Total car crash, bell to bell. I'll say 3.75 stars, B+. I had a lot of fun watching this. Bully Ray then showed up after this ended, which was cool just for the sake of nostalgia. He said the Road Warriors are the greatest tag team of all time, but they could give wrestling fans one great tag team match of all time to end it, something that can never happen again. Hardys against Team 3D at Bound for Glory. Fans appropriately chanted, "Where is Devon?" And it seemed like Bubba said he would be there. And look, the Hardys, they can still go to a degree. They proved it in this match. I'm not sure I have any desire to see Bubba and Devon wrestle again, but it does seem like this is going to be a retirement match for him. I cannot imagine it's going to be anything but an absolute mess. Will I be seated for it? Probably on tape delay. I'll eventually watch it. I don't think I'll watch it live. Indy Hartwell upset Tessa Blanchard in a match. The crowd was awful until the finish, but they did get up for Hartwell. Indy was somewhat improved, but she's really rigid going spot to spot still, and there was a lot of sloppiness bell to bell. For a non-title match, 2 finisher kickouts was a bit ridiculous. Indy's Hurts donut finisher, that's strong, and she ultimately hit it 3 times to win. Blanchard attacked her after the bell, and then even slapped the interviewer before dragging her head into steel steps. That was actually kind of fun. Man, if Tessa wasn't so problematic, she'd be in WWE or AEW. 2.5 stars C. Cedric Alexander fought Mustafa Ali. This was a WrestleMania 34 rematch. Ali took a nasty tope suicida to the dome. Somehow he was okay. He also took a planned backdrop into the steel steps. That was gnarly. Alexander kicked out of a 450 for a false finish. Ali kicked out of lumbar check. The finish was great. Alexander took out a woman who was distracting with a lumbar check, but when he landed on the canvas, Ali immediately capitalized with a 450, got the 1-2-3. This was a perfect opener for the show. The multiple interference spots, it capped it at 4 stars A-. But if that wasn't included, and this got another 5 minutes, it would have been the match of the night, and it would have been an A. I hope we get a rubber match between them after Ali presumably becomes champion at some point, because that would make a lot of sense. It was great seeing Ali as a fully realized character in TNA. I'm glad Alexander's getting to show out like this down there. Both guys, as we said many times on this show and prior podcasts that I was on, they were heavily overlooked by WWE. The only other main card match was Matt Cardona and the System against Dark State. Tagging was irrelevant here. There were a few fun sequences, but as an entire match, it was a mess. A TV match that had no business being on a pay-per-view. 2 stars, C-. It was by far the worst on the entire show. All in all, TNA Slammiversary, it was an entertaining way to spend a Sunday night without any other wrestling or sports on TV. Definitely the best TNA show that I've watched start to finish, though being completely fair and transparent, I can probably count those on one hand. I'm borderline, I'm going to give it an 84 out of 100, a B. It was a good show. It was worth it for TNA to tune in, but did it make me want to come back for more? Not necessarily. There's a pretty big live TNA show that's probably happening either as you listen to this or it already happened by the time you get to listen to this. It was their TNA Impact show that was airing live. Maybe that does something, but this was pretty much it when it comes to my live viewing of TNA. So let's move over to NXT. It was in Houston, by the way, on Tuesday night. And there's going to be, I haven't done it yet, there's going to be some drops added to our board from Booker T just from the open of this show. He did a walk and talk, hype up promo, which look, if you don't like Booker T, something is wrong with you. It's funny that we were just talking Tuesday about WWE not doing the tracking camera stuff anymore, only for them to literally do it at the start of this episode. He did flub Blake Monroe's name, calling her Monica, but Booker clarified on commentary that one of the women in his Reality of Wrestling company goes by Monica Monroe. So, okay, fair enough. Trick Williams backstage told High Rise he wasn't about to let The Undertaker call him out. He was going to call the dead man out. They offered to get his back. Trick said he was going to stand on business himself. He also dismissed Javon Evans, who was trying to stir up shit. But Javon decided to follow him out and see what was going to happen. He never followed him out, so I don't know what that was about. Williams came out bragging about Slammiversary, calling himself the greatest TNA champion of all time. Trick then called the LFG kids from last week snitches for calling Taker, saying he's become soft and that whole show is ridiculous, and Trick is the only one with the balls to actually call him out. So Taker entered to American Badass, looking heavy and old as shit, moved slower and worse than he has in a long time. Look, age is a son of a bitch. Taker put over Trick's outfit and swagger, but said he's a dead man walking who's lacking respect. He said Williams was hungry and had that dog in him as NXT champion, but as TNA champion, his attitude is going to be his downfall and everything around him will shatter. Trick snapped, saying no one on LFG or an NXT or WWE is a star like him. Taker said he's too light in the ass to step to an OG, and if he wants to dance with the devil, he can flip that switch and make his ass famous. Trick tried to swing, he got chokeslammed, just like Braun Breaker in that special NXT episode that I attended in Orlando. Very similar to that. It's crazy that in a segment with The Undertaker, let's face facts, Trick Williams was the star. Taker was slow and plodding over the first 3/4 of his promo, almost like there was not enough content for the time allowed, but he did indeed flip that switch in the end, and that led to a hot finish, even if it was clunky. I just wish he was talking that way for a longer portion of the segment. Trick did a great job puffing out his chest, only to flip his own switch and then appear legitimately frightened when Taker got serious. He sold the chokeslam well. He continues to prove his bona fides as a heel. It's been a great move for him. Taker paled in comparison to the Breaker segment I mentioned that I saw live in Orlando, but Trick was stronger than Braun, apples to apples. All in all, valuable usage of Taker, even if the whole LFG connection was thin and relatively unnecessary, especially since they didn't even bother to promote it well on this show. Crazy, though, that we got Undertaker chokeslamming the TNA champion on WWE television. It's wild when you think about that. Fatal Influence got the second segment of NXT with JC Jane showing off her 2 belts, but they didn't receive their normal entrance, which was really produced well lately. JC said that she runs women's wrestling, sarcastically calling herself a third wheel from Toxic Attraction and the most beatable champion. Jane ripped all the new WWE signings, calling them hot free agents, indie darlings, or athletes. She claimed she achieved without any of them. What do you kids call that? Cap? Lash Legend cut her off, ready to knock her off her high horse, saying she was the NXT superstar everyone was talking about after Evolution. Jada Parker was next, getting a huge pop. Jada put over Lash for Evolution, but called herself the future of the division, a walking reality check. Not a bad moniker for her, by the way. Jane tried to sick her girls on the faces, but when they stayed with their feet planted and didn't attack when she called for it, JC punched first. That led to a brawl. The faces quickly won, and then they argued with one another. Jane later expected Fallon Henley and Jasmine Nix to fight each of her apparent challengers. Michelle McCool walked in getting zero pop, literally zero pop, saying Jasmine should take on Jada and Fallon should take on Lash. Jane agreed, saying Henley was way better than Nix. A rare situation where she put over Fallon. This part was super strange. Why would Michelle have an opinion on this? How would she know what the right matchups are? Why was she being injected in this at all? It didn't make a shred of sense. Anyway, it was probably JC's best promo in WWE, undoubtedly Lash's best promo in WWE. She was much more confident and put together than usual. The pop for Jada was cool to hear, especially on the road outside of the Performance Center. Everything I've ever said about her, it seems to be coming to fruition. She probably needs another year or two if she's going to be completely ready for the main roster, and that should come with a couple title reigns in NXT. And by direct comparison, she did outclass Lash on the mic. But again, better from Lash. Fatal Influence, they've absolutely won me over as a group. Much more cohesive than they were even 3 months ago. If Henley retains an ill-fitting piece, that may be true, but it's better than it was previously. Given Jane's reign is going longer than expected, I'd love to see Fallon be the one to beat her for the NXT championship. It makes too much sense, and if Fallon isn't going to get called up, she needs to have serious hardware and a legitimate run atop the division. So Trick later came across Obafemi backstage. As they stared down one another, JC got between them. So all 4 straps, 2 NXT, 2 TNA, they were all there at once. She butted past the guys who continued to snarl at one another before separating. Just a cool visual, pretty much it. Yoshiki and Amora found Javon backstage and asked him for advice. Evans is like, dude, I'm 21. What kind of advice am I going to give you? Which was pretty funny. But he told Amora he wasn't a bad friend for wanting to go down his own path and chase his dreams. They had a couple funny moments after this with Yoshi reminding Javon he's still young. Just a nice transitional segment. Then we had the NXT Championship, Femi against Inamura and Josh Briggs in a triple threat match. I did some math before the bell here. 15% of Oba's televised matches have been triple threats. That's a crazy percentage, but they've all been awesome, if memory serves, and this one, really not any different than those.
Big meaty man slapping meat. That's what I want.
Reinforce the ring post. The beat's going to be flying tonight, gentlemen.
Femi was up in a doomsday device setup, but grabbed Briggs by the hair, just pull him down, and he hit an electric chair instead. Kind of weird set. Briggs caught Femi with a huge chokeslam, but got pounced accidentally by Inamura. Yoshi caught Oba with an inside-out last ride Liger bomb for 2 broken falls by Briggs. Inamura then took Femi down with a Uranagi and again hit his momentum splash, but Briggs broke the fall with a moonsault for a false finish. The best friends finally started brawling. Briggs murked Inamura with a lariat. Femi then murked Briggs with a running European uppercut that looked like it took his damn head off. If you compared that to, I want to say, Avengers Endgame, when Hulk tries to go get the whatever stone, time stone, let's say, from not Doctor Strange, but whoever the woman is. I don't know all these characters. But you remember she pushes like Banner's body out of the Hulk's body? If you told me Femi did that to Briggs here with his European uppercut, I would have completely believed you. And I know that was a rough ass reference, but for those of you who know what I'm talking about, I think you can at least visualize it in your head. Anyway, fall from grace followed for the dominant win and the title retention. Briggs attacked Inamura briefly ringside, running him into the steel steps. So they've officially broken up, and Oba celebrated in the ring. And frankly, there's just no question what this match was.
He don't want no water. He don't want no bread. All he wants is meat.
I mean, seriously.
There's a lot of beef out here.
I need some meat.
Yeah, I did. And they provided it. Holy hell. Did these guys bump meat? It was an absolute shame this only went 12 minutes or so, because you add another 5, do some huge spots outside of the ring. This might have been a legitimate contender for Big Meaty Moment of the Year in the 2025 Getting Over Awards, aka the Meaties. Hell, it still might get a nomination. These guys beat the shit out of each other, and Femi in the finish was dominant as he's ever looked. 3.75 stars, B+, 4 slabs of beef, but there were moments where I thought I might give it all 5. They just never got there. Ricky Saints found Javon doing some paperwork backstage, advising him not to overthink it because he's coming off a huge win over Jasper Troy at Great American Bash. Evans put him over in kind, giving him the same advice going up against Troy himself. I liked this moment between them. Couple guys with brave futures at way different stages of their careers. NXT ended with Taker finding Evans still taking notes. He offered him advice as they looked at a TV that showed Oba standing tall in the ring. He basically said, go after the big dog and don't let up until you take him down. Now, regarding Javon and Ricky, I will reiterate that using Evans in a tag team with Alexander, that should have been the move back in the day. They totally could have been tag team champions before breaking up. I wouldn't mind a similar concept happening with Saints if he's going to be in NXT for a bit and he's not going to hold the main championship. Evans really needs to be strapped up. And while Taker suggested he go after Femi, I mean, I guess that could happen soon. I just don't really see that happening for like 9 months. And really, I don't get the rush. The dude is 21 years old. He could spend 4 years in NXT and still be the youngest person on the main roster. So unless he's going to get multiple title reigns and work in and around NXT, I feel like there was a missed opportunity to spend this time progressing him up the card. Tag Team Championship, North American Championship, NXT Championship. But I loved how Javon was factored into this entire episode, despite not wrestling. Taker really played that off nicely. Taker really paid that off nicely. And I'm interested to see how soon this booking with Femi happens, especially given Williams is still eyeing him backstage with regularity. Maybe we get another triple threat. These three keep feuding. Then it gets broken off with just Oba and Javon. We'll see what happens here. We had Saints against Troy scheduled for the show. Jasper straight manhandled Ricky at the bell to the point he literally needed to bite him just to get an upper hand. Saints hit an excellent delayed tornado DDT and splashed dude over the ropes outside. They brawled up the ramp with the referee not counting them out. Something happened off screen where a piece of the ramp collapsed while Saints was laying on it. So Troy decided to do a senton while he was on the broken metal plate. The referee then started his count, and Jasper barely made his way into the ring to win via countout. This was really strange. My first take was the collapsed ramp was clearly planned given the finish, but why WWE didn't bother to show it until the senton, I simply did not understand. And then like 5 minutes passed, and I came to the realization of what actually happened. The senton was supposed to be the catalyst for the ramp breaking. Instead, the ramp went into business for itself, snapped early, and they had to improv on the spot. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. What remains confusing, though, is why the match finished this way. If Saints is leaving NXT and you want to put Troy over, then just let him beat dude in the ring. If Saints is not leaving NXT, why is he getting another spot, which would only make sense to do if it was leading to some time off? Similar to what he already had with Ethan Page. Saints has been in NXT for 5 months. It feels like he's missed 2 of them. So this is definitely a wait-and-see situation before I can truly render judgment. Regarding Troy, he's just not ready to be in weekly matches on TV. He's talented. He has tons of potential, but he's not ready yet. It's interesting he's already on NXT, and Tyra May Steele, who was the women's winner of the first season of LFG, she's in Evolve. That's probably where he should be. Jordan Grace was barred from the arena by Ava, given what she did last week. Ren Sinclair then got gassed up by NQCC backstage, and she was doubting herself ahead of the big match. Miles Bourne came through to get her back as well, even though he's not in the group anymore. Lexus King was in the background, still trying to get by with not being able to hear like Miles. So we had Monroe against Sinclair. Blake's entrance was great, more fully realized and polished than most who have debuted recently. Ren went on a nice run, only to eat a butterfly DDT on the 1-2-3. Grace posted a video on social media showing her sneaking into the arena. She attacked out of the crowd as Monroe was about to cut a promo. Security tried to stop her, but she beat the shit out of like a half dozen of them, including murking one dude with a German suplex. Blake then took advantage with the opening, hit her butterfly DDT on Jordan into a steel chair ringside. Disappointing that Sinclair got squashed when she never gets to wrestle, and Monroe certainly could have used an extended singles performance. Similarly disappointing that Monroe is using that as her finisher. It is way too basic for someone of her talent level in 2025. It's great as a signature, extremely lacking as a finisher. I don't understand why one of the arguably hottest storylines on the brand got so rushed from both a match and a post-match standpoint. And I don't understand why Ren exclusively gets short matches. She's one of the most talented and entertaining women on this entire brand. She can actually go in the ring. Why doesn't she get to wrestle? Monroe did come across looking at a star, no question about that. And Grace doing this unhinged role, destroying men, it's easily the best work she's done in NXT to this point. The storyline's working for both of them. I just wish this was more polished, and it lasted longer. Later backstage, Charlie Dempsey demanded Bourne go away when Miles told Charlie he doesn't necessarily know better than everyone like he thinks. So Bubba Ray Dudley randomly comes in, again gets zero pop, and threateningly gets in Dempsey's face. Then he squeezes Sinclair so tight in a hug, saying she did a great job. He suggested a rematch between Dempsey and Tavian Heights, saying he had a unique idea. But it was basically the exact same stipulation as the first time. The difference being Tavian has to stop complaining if he loses. I thought Bubba was going to say, like, you'll have to gel as a tag team and go after the titles, which would have made sense given the division is barren. They work incredibly well as a duo, and Bubba would actually know something about tag teams. Alas, King then popped in calling Bourne a liar, saying he's deaf because he hears through noise-canceling headphones. Okay. Bourne responded he is deaf, and King is not, but everyone wishes he was mute. It's a pretty good line. Extremely odd segment, though, in every facet. Sinclair got squashed, so how did she do a great job? The match stipulation was hardly unique in any manner. What do noise-canceling headphones have to do with a guy being medically deaf? When we thought King was doing this to try to get on Bourne's level and enhance his other senses, that played. Going in this direction with it, it's straight up stupid. This was the worst part of the entire episode on Tuesday. Ethan Page held his North American Championship ceremony, saying he was the greatest North American to hold the title. He would bring more honor, dignity, pride, and class to the title than all 17 of his predecessors combined. I did not realize there had already been 17 champions. He praised his family for raising him in Canada rather than the United States, immediately drawing massive heat since they were in Texas. Duh. Page declared the championship would no longer represent the continent of North America. Then he got muted for 30 seconds, so I have no idea what he said after that. Page said he was born in Canada but made in America, making him the greatest North American alive. So he threw the belt outside the ring and unveiled a new one with a Canadian flag strap, saying the title now comes with the Canadian standard of excellence, be it for athletes, standard of living, food, women, whatever the case. There were literally 5 different mutes during this segment because fans chanted asshole, shut the F up. It completely ruined it. WWE's unwillingness or inability to get a censor who can mute words instead of just blocking out 30 seconds of audio, it is maddening. Santino Marella interrupted as Page was singing "O Canada," getting a huge pop. Santino put over Italy, saying he lives in Canada, and they're all not like Page, whose talk makes him sick. He agreed the title should be held by someone with dignity, honor, class, and pride, so he challenged Ethan next week. Page wanted to immediately go. He ducked out of the ring when the Cobra came out. This was a wild segment. Page is operating at the top of his game right now. Thought he did a great job when he debuted in NXT, won the main title. But this work now, starting with the Javon feud, now moving into this title, it's been next level. He took a belt reveal segment that's usually so transparent, such an eye roll, and he turned it into a situation where he got red hot heat from the crowd, and he made Santino come in and look like he was Superman about to take down Lex Luthor. Page impresses me more and more by the week. He should be a Smack Talker of the Year nominee, and he is actively elevating this strap every single week it remains on his waist. Santino was excellent playing off of him, and while we know the result of next week's match, we can assume it, you would have been hard-pressed to tell me that I'd be this excited for it to happen going into NXT on Tuesday night. This is actually a dream match for Page, by the way, so it's super cool that he's getting the opportunity. I was slightly worried that he was going to unveil like a redesigned North American title, because it's one of the best looking straps in all of WWE. Luckily, it's just the strap itself, and it can go back to the maroon leather once he loses. A-level segment that could have been A+ without the mutes, and a bit less convolution comparing Canada to the United States to North America. It got really wordy, but it was awesome. Hank and Tank and Zaruka fought the Culling. Interesting mixed 8-person match to kind of kick the show off. Zaruka was dressed like the guys. They did surround sound body slams and a 4-way honk honk. Sol Ruka had a great hot tag as per usual. Did a keg stand on Tatum Paxley for a broken fall. Sol and Izzy Dame took out one guy each with top rope, moves outside. Zarya then pulled Sean Spears off the top rope for an F5. Ruka put Dame into the steel steps as Zarya spieled Tatum, but the lights suddenly went out with Darkstate appearing. Before this happened, Spears had handed Paxley one of her dolls. When the lights came back on, Tatum had Zarya in a pinning combination and got the 1-2-3 out of nowhere. Now, I presume she used the doll as a weapon because we didn't see Zarya get knocked out, but she didn't even move her legs during the pin. But how could a tiny plastic doll serve that purpose? This was a tremendous chaos match that brought a ton of energy to the show open. Just a lot of fun from bell to bell. And seeing Zaruka so easily take out the men, that was pretty awesome. I thought it was top-notch troll job by Shawn Michaels to finally put Paxley over and not let us see the process of her getting a win. I presume the Dark State presence was just because they're going after the tag team titles sooner than later, but it was kind of random to do it during a mixed match like this. Regardless, a fun start to the show. Obviously, a positive result for Paxley. We continue wanting her to get the respect that she deserves, and getting wins like this, it certainly helps toward that end. Overall, this was the best episode of NXT in a while. Super sports entertaining from start to finish, just across the entire 2 hours. The only down part was really Ren getting squashed for no reason whatsoever. Well, that and then randomly injecting McCool and Bubba into those segments. Both of them were incredibly dumb. But the actual content of the show, storyline progression, character progression, was fun. It was a great watch. As I said, about 60 seconds on Evolve here, Keanu Carver has a spinning power slam finisher that I am all about. Good looking move. He also beat Timothy Thatcher by knockout, ramming his head into the ring apron a bunch of times. Cappuccino Jones and Jack Cartwheel. This dude has to change his last name. They're now known as Adrenaline Drip. Great tag team name. Dante Chen was signed to Evolve, if you were wondering where he's been. Looks like Ridge Holland is there as well, which, yeah, that's a death knell for sure. Idris Enofe continues to look the part, and they've given him a character. I'm just not sure whether it's all going to come together for this dude. there's a lot of other talent on this show. There was a fun last woman standing match with Kylie Ray and Wendy Chu that included Legos and a huge bump off the apron through a table. Solid B match that was creative and fun. Callie Armstrong retained her title over Natalya, actually hitting her finisher and getting the 1-2-3. I figured they would protect Natty a little bit, but I'm not surprised she put Callie over like that. That's Natty. Solid B- match. Good work by both of them. And lastly, Jackson Drake retained his title over Lince Dorado. Another B- match. Drake cheated to beat him, a contrast to what we just talked about with the women. Brooks Jensen attacked after the bell. His demotion makes a lot of sense. But like I said with Holland, kind of a death knell. Last chance saloon for this guy. And that's Evolve from basically the last month. I did not watch this week, but I will at some point over the next month. That allows us to move into AEW, where we're going to break down everything that happened across Dynamite and Collision. And I'm just going to tell you guys off the top, not a banner week for AEW. Not at all. Collision was extremely rough. Dynamite was better, not that much better. Unless I'm counting incorrectly, only 2 of 9 matches this week across both shows were storyline relevant. One of them was a tournament match, which is just like all-time weak, if we're being completely honest. Starting with a segment from Collision, Colt Cabana was randomly at the commentary table for no reason whatsoever. Seconds after he was shown on screen, Marina Shafir starts choking him out with a chain over the barricade before Moxley attacked him. John Moxley, that is. He bladed immediately, and then they hung him over the ropes by the chain, just like how Mox lost the title. And then they just left. Chris Statlander was cutting a promo backstage when Death Riders walked by, with Wheeler Yuta telling her, "Champions bounce back," which motivated her. Okay, is she joining them or not at this point? The Cabana stuff? Big time yikes.
What is going on?
On Dynamite, Hangman Page fought Yuta. Page backstage explained this match by saying he was angry over Cabana being choked out. Okay. MJF then came up threatening, and Hangman completely tore him a new asshole, saying he'd only get a title match if he cashes in or earns it, but he's a coward and he won't do either of those things. Good snap from Page here. He beat Yuta in 3 minutes and then punched him in the forearm with a chain. So Yuta, of course, bladed on the forehead. This is 8 minutes into the show. Hangman then actually threatened to hang him over the ropes, but he didn't. He yelled to Wheeler, "No one is there to save you," which was obviously true. No one came out. It was actually fine. Page still being stuck in like the Death Riders vortex, frankly, sucks. Can you imagine if Cody Rhodes kept feuding with Roman Reigns in the Bloodline immediately after WrestleMania 40? Mox backstage on Dynamite cut a promo giving Page some credit for fighting enough to beat him. He admitted his loss, saying there's no reason to be a bitch about it. He just wants to fight again, and he knew Page wouldn't avoid a rematch challenge. So Mox promised to fix his mistake by figuring out Hangman. Marina then said one word that was entirely muted. There was also a flashed graphic on screen for Hangman versus Wheeler, still to come tonight, even though that match had already happened. It opened the show. You'll remember I praised Mox about last 4 weeks, I would say, for a month of killer promos and storytelling. This was nowhere near that level. It was extremely weak. On Dynamite, AEW announced a tag team eliminator series, which is literally just a tournament to determine a number 1 contender at Forbidden Door. I'm curious to see all the teams involved, just given how terrible the division has been recently. The first match was FTR beating Jet Speed. The visuals were strange because FTR wore green, but Stoke wore red, white, and blue, exactly the same colors as Jet Speed. FTR ultimately won through cheating, with Dax Harwood grabbing Stoke's crutch for leverage. It's like a B+ match. Definitely the right winners. Adam Copeland interrupted a post-match promo saying he made a business deal so he could hurt FTR without laying a finger on them. Hurt Syndicate entered, without MJF, by the way, for a brief 2-on-2 brawl. Copeland then speared a security guard that production mostly missed. The team-up makes sense here, given Syndicate are tweeners. They want competition, but it also seemed to give away that FTR is just going to win this tournament. If that's the plan, they really should have saved this at least 1 more week, if not 2. Later backstage, MJF was angry about Syndicate becoming boys with Copeland when it took him months to get into their crew. MVP said, "Hey man, this is just a business arrangement." MJF said they should be focused on getting the title back around his waist. Bobby Lashley got pissed off, threw him up against a locker. Ironic that he put him up against a locker, saying he's sick of MJF being selfish every week and he wants him out of the Syndicate. The others shook their heads at him and left. If this is a misdirection, okay. If not, I mean, yeah, I don't get it at all. Even later, MJF cut an in-ring promo calling Page a coward, saying he wouldn't execute the contract, but he would beat him fair and square. I didn't completely understand that. Mark Briscoe interrupted, saying some shit, challenging him for next week. MJF repeated that he's white trash, saying even his fans don't think he's a top guy, but it must be depressing knowing that no one will ever respect him as much as his brother. Mark ran down, MJF dipped out. This was identical to their pre-All In shit. It was actually just worse than that. It didn't move anything. Not a rough segment per se, but it went nowhere. So then following this, Briscoe beat Claudio Castagnoli in 14 minutes. Why do this match? Why was it in the main event? I wish I could tell you. Crazy that Death Riders are supposed to be this dominant faction, but they always lose to mid-carders. So Death Riders attacks after the bell. Hangman casually strolls out, clearly unbothered about helping Briscoe. So he goes right up to Mox and he says, hey, dude, what you said in your promo about me being able to not just win the title, but retain the title week after week, that not being possible, that's bullshit. So I challenge you next week one-on-one in a title rematch that bars all outside interference. Then he called him a dumbass and he left. So it's no interference, but what about no weapons, right? Like, wouldn't that be the big time differential? Remember what I just said about Cody sticking with Bloodline after WrestleMania 40? Can you imagine if Cody and Roman Reigns rematched for the WWE Championship 2 weeks later, except instead of doing it in a stadium, they did it in a small arena in front of 1,100 people? Yikes. This episode of Dynamite was a mess. This being the leading bit through the show, it certainly played a role in that. Okay, we get this match next week. Let's say it's a 5-star match. And then, what does that accomplish? Does it put over Hangman more? No. Does it make Mox look worse? Yeah, it does. Does it pop a rating? Maybe. We've already seen the match. We know Hangman's not going to drop the title right away, so I don't need to tune in because of that specifically. I didn't get this at all. Something I got even less. So Will Ospreay comes out on Dynamite for an interview saying his neck has been bothering him for the better part of a year, 10 months. And AEW is not to blame for that because he's hid it from everyone wanting to get the company over the finish line at All In. Luckily, he turned from that, whatever that was, to kayfabe, saying his goal was to retrieve the AEW championship from Mox. He wanted to help Hangman and Swerve to their aims. Okay, that was better. Ospreay said he has 2 herniated discs going into his spinal cord, which are completely treatable, and he should be back for Forbidden Door, which is literally 1 month away. Ospreay then threatened Death Riders, got bleeped doing so, and he also said he wanted a rematch with Hangman sooner than later. Swerve then came out, hugged him, raised his arm in the air. I gotta tell you, I was completely flummoxed and dumbfounded by this segment. Outside of trying to put over AEW as this bastion of health, which we know not to be true, what exactly was the point of this? The entire setup made it seem as if it was like the second coming of the Adam Cole promo, where this guy was going to be out indefinitely and we didn't know when he was going to get back, at least 6 months, 9 months. He was sad and monotone at first. Swerve comes out at the end, lifts his arm. You're a champion, man, even though you're not going to be here. Hugs him like he was going on this long injury layoff. The dude is not only going to be back in 1 month, to the day of this podcast, by the way, he's basically stating he's going to be wrestling at Forbidden Door. So as a viewer, I don't have any sympathy for him. People get hurt and come back in a month all the time. Why was this such a big deal? Why were you trying to make a tear-jerking segment when the guy's going to be back in 4 weeks? I felt like I was going crazy here. And by the way, why is Forbidden Door between All In and All Out? Don't get it twisted. I'm glad that All Out's not the week after or 2 weeks after, because that was terrible when they did it that way. But why is it 2 months later? Doesn't make any sense. On Dynamite, Swerve beat Hechicero by disqualification. Don Callis interrupted the ring announce. Lance Archer pushed Swerve off the top rope when he was ready for his stomp. Brody King and Bandito saved. Then Kazuchika Okada hit him with a chair, only for Swerve to wrap it around his neck briefly before Okada ran away. Callis and Josh Alexander, they were both ringside. They did nothing about this as Swerve was getting ready to murk this guy's neck. I should be crazy hype for Okada Swerve. The build these first 2 weeks has been straight up trash, homies.
That is one big pile of shit.
On Collision, Athena showed up in one of the balconies holding her contract, saying it was now Athena Elite Wrestling. She mocked Toni Storm's innuendos, pose, and more, which popped me personally. She also kept calling her Tonti the entire time, which I get it, but saying it 17 times in one segment, it is a little much. Toni stormed out to the ring, cutting her off, challenging her to sign the contract. Athena told her to beg on her knees like a whore, actual line she used, but denied. saying that she'd be waiting on the other side of Storm's match against Billie Starkz on Dynamite. Tony then chased Athena out of the balcony, and that was it. Pretty good segment, all things considered. Athena is breathing some necessary life into this women's division. She is more believable than most, and that's great. On Collision, Alex Windsor beat Taya Valkyrie in 3 minutes, despite 3 weeks of promos. Tony Schiavone acted surprised that she was signed with AEW, and despite 3 weeks of promos and a legitimate opponent, she won a match in 3 minutes. That's all she's done. I want you to keep that in mind. 3-minute win over Taya Valkyrie, who's a bottom-level low-carder at this point. On Dynamite, Storm beat Starkz in an eliminator match that went 9 minutes. Decent bout here. Starkz cut a real solid promo on Storm with help from Athena before the bell. Really enjoyed their dynamic together. The referee got knocked down, so Athena came down with the contract, hit Tony in the hands with it, brutalized her ringside, and then actually hit her in the face with it. Then Athena went to sign the contract when Windsor ran in for the save. Now, commentary told us that this made sense because Windsor is challenging Athena for the ROH title on Collision. She is? Since when? Why? Because she beat Valkyrie last week? This sounded so ridiculous to me, so I said, Silver King, you can't rant about something if you don't know what you're talking about. Do your research. Even though I had a pretty good idea of the way this was going to go. I figured, okay, maybe Windsor has won a bunch of matches in Ring of Honor that I just don't know about because I don't watch that show. Her last Ring of Honor match was February 15th against Athena. A title match that she lost. The Taya match that she won last Saturday, it's her lone singles win in AEW or Ring of Honor. Ever. And yet she's getting a second title match against the forever champion, a dominant women's champion. You know, I spent 5 good minutes shitting all over WWE's women's tag team title booking on Tuesday's show. Maybe that was a waste of breath because this shit is straight up absurd by comparison to that.
0.0.
0.0, Mr. Blutarski.
I hate this. I hate this crap. Stop. Stop with the crap.
There was a solid video package for the Julia Hart Sky Blue Thekla group, which may or may not be called Triangle of Madness. Sounds familiar if that's the name. I guess the whole deal with Brody and Buddy Matthews just completely dropped for Julia now. She's on her own. On Dynamite, Willow Nightingale backstage says she feels renewal in the air now that she no longer has to deal with the Death Riders. I mean, she barely dealt with them. Then she challenged Thekla because she basically had her pinned last week. Why isn't she challenging Stat, who broke that fall and then brawled with her to the back when their issues still have not been entirely resolved? She's the one that cost her the money, not Thekla. Doesn't make sense. On Collision, Ricochet beat AR Fox. Storyline relevant, definitely, but nothing to write home about. I'm actually going to correct my math. I said, what did I say? 2 out of 9? Sorry. It's actually 3 of 9, 33%. That's my bad. I miscounted. But again, 33% still not great. Gates of Agony beat Learning Tree Crew and the Guns in one of those idiotic $200,000 matches. Shivani's call of this bout literally made me never want to watch wrestling ever again in the rest of my life. Ricochet interfered in the finish. One of the Guns appeared to get hurt during this, which is crazy unfortunate because they just returned to the ring. Juice Robinson and Big Bill later brawled backstage. Juice was calling out Ricochet for costing them money. It's crazy how Juice has just completely lost all of his aura by shaving his beard and changing his hair. And I promise you that's not a Juice Robinson individual insult. I said the same thing about Wesley in NXT. Backstage on Dynamite, Ricochet said the team is now called GOA. They laughed about their win Saturday and said people will either respect or fear them. This was actually kind of solid. GOA, they looked much better alongside Ricochet than they have previously. On Collision, Megan Bayne beat Ty Mello. Relevant, given they had been feuding as partners, but just okay match. On Collision, Dustin Rhodes opened the show looking like he went in a tanning booth with Braun Breaker. He cut a passionate promo about continuing to keep stepping at age 56. Kyle Fletcher interrupted, saying he wouldn't rest until he takes the TNT title from him. Dustin said Kyle makes excuses while he works hard, and he finally won after losing 4 times. Callis put Rhodes over as a legend and a real man, but suggested he might break again when he loses the title, so he'd hold a place for him in the family. Fletcher attacked. Rhodes stood tall. Nothing wrong with this segment at all. I just can't stress to you how little I cared about it. Dustin had his moment, flipped the title, let's run some feuds worth spending time on in 2025. On Collision, Bandito, Mascara Dorada, and Jet Speed beat Don Callis family in the main event. Match of the night from a quality standpoint, but it was a typical AEW variety that lacked tagging, and it was more focused on spots than anything else. Rocky Romero got pinned again. Of course he did, taking 21 plex and a shooting star press from the Luchadors. On Collision, Roosh beat Katsuyori Shibata in 10 minutes. Why? Great question. Powerhouse Hobbs saved from a post-match attack, so I presume LFI is going to go after the trio's titles. Samoa Joe's been written off. Hook still seemingly has post-concussion symptoms. Really strange. Why does Shibata always lose matches? It's really weird. On Collision, Skyflight got a promo segment with Scorpio Sky wearing an ECW-styled SCU shirt. Again, why aren't they just SCU? Callis interrupted, so Christopher Daniels stepped to him, willing to have their factions fight. Super thin, just given barely anything was even said here, but okay. Why does Callis have to be involved in everything? Why are there so many people in his group? Why are they like the generic heel mid-carders now of AEW? I don't get it. On Collision, Anthony Bowens backstage was studying an iPad before Billy Gunn came in, with Bowens again blaming him for all of his issues. Gunn told him stop obsessing over Max Caster, who was on the iPad. Bowens said Gunn didn't have his back at All In. So Billy pointed out, dude, you're all over the place. You want my help? You don't want my help? Make a decision. That's facts. Then he informed that Bowens had a slump buster match to get him back on track next week. This storyline has been the absolute shits. You have this guy come back with a new convoluted gimmick, getting a massive pop initially. You just throw him right on the struggle bus. Is Acclaim just coming back together? Is that the entire point of this? Like, why? On Collision, Roderick Strong beat Max Caster in 2 minutes. 6 to 8 months this has now been going on. On Dynamite, Nick Wayne cut a promo backstage promising they would prove to be a dangerous faction now that they were uncaged. This was unintentionally hilarious. This dude is supposed to be like leading the group, right? Not faction, because there's only 3 of them. The group. And his mom does absolutely nothing. So really it's a team. But it was unintentionally hysterical because he was about 1.5 feet below both Kip Sabian and his mother. He should be the one physically positioned to look the tallest and the strongest. But again, he looked like a child next to like a big brother and a mother. Also, why is the ROH TV champion being so heavily featured on the main show immediately after All In? Put this at the end of Collision, if anything. Really shouldn't be on there at all. And folks, that wraps up AEW this week. Like I said, it was one problematic segment after another. I really struggled to enjoy these 4 hours. Collision was completely worthless. Dynamite, it had something to it, but really not that much. It seemed like the whole show was written on a napkin like 90 minutes before it began. Maybe it was, for all I know. I think they only announced like 2 segments before the show. So that's possible. We haven't talked about ratings here in a long time because there hasn't been much need to. Everything's been status quo. I do believe it's only worthwhile when going over, notable highs and lows, at least at this juncture. And unfortunately, across the board in all 3 shows that we're covering here, there were some highs and lows. NXT did its highest rating since February, surely due to The Undertaker, but it was also a quality show. Collision last Saturday did its lowest demo ever in its regular time slot, when unopposed by WWE. It was down 60% year over year. I'd bet serious money the Collision shuffling we've seen the last couple of months, that's going to continue in a more permanent way. Saturdays during NFL season, Thursdays in the offseason, we'll see. But Saturday night, it is a death spot. That would normally screw up the show. The truth is, Collision is so generally worthless, it's not the end of the world. And then Dynamite on Wednesday, woof. Second lowest demo of the year, 0.14. That means it's the second lowest in history. That is not where you want to see numbers 2 weeks after All In. So look, folks, that wraps up this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. We went way longer than we usually do on Thursday, but look, some major news happened right at the start of the day. And of course, we had to talk TNA Slammiversary as well. Don't forget, we have the WWE episode already in the podcast feed, and we're going to be back next Tuesday with your WWE SummerSlam Ultimate Preview, of course, next Saturday and Sunday with 2 WWE SummerSlam Instant Analysis episodes. So we went 6-episode week, 3-episode week, 1 normal 2-episode week for the Silver King, back doing 4 episodes next week right here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. On the way out, remember to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast and Blue Sky at Getting Over for episode drops, news analysis highlights, and all of that good stuff. Don't forget,
It's all about Defy.
so head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. And please remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
I hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Over head. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis every week. We're a free show. We're an ad-free show. It's $5 a month, $50 for the year. Please support us. buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Thank you all for listening to this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. This is the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, finally signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.